Alright, so we're over here on the right hand side. First thing you want to do is make sure these boots are intact, they're not cracked. Make sure your rotor looks good. This one does, other than some surface rust on it. And I'm going to try to see if I can pry these pistons back the way I like to do. It's a time saver if you're able to get in here and real gingerly pry the pistons back. That way they're already pried back before you even get the caliper off. Just go slow. This is just a time saver. You can go ahead and take the caliper off and push them back manually if you want. But I've always done this just because it's quick, easy, and now I don't have to worry about pushing them back. So let's go ahead and zip this caliper off here. Set it right on top here. Notice hopefully you can see that. You know, the pistons are all pushed in right now, so we're good to go. And don't worry if you mess up the old pad, because obviously you're replacing them. Now these pads did not come with new hardware right here. It is nice to be able to replace the hardware that's in here. That way they slide good, but just make sure they're clean. These are clean. We're in Texas, so they don't get a whole lot of rust or buildup. And make sure the rotor's good. Other than surface rust, this car's been sitting a week, so there's some surface rust there on the rotor. Okay, these are feeling kind of dry. Yeah, so I'm going to clean both these up. And we're going to go ahead and re-grease them. Look at that, that one's drier than a bone. So let me get them cleaned up and greased. Okay, got them cleaned up and greased. Now on this particular vehicle, a lot of times these pins are identical, the top and bottom, but the bottom one is totally different than the top one. So make sure that if the car that you're working on is different, that you get them in the right spots. And there's flats on these, so if you position them properly, you won't have no problems getting the rotor to slide on. Piston's already pushed back. Make sure your little tab there's not and that's it. The only thing you want to make 100% sure is that when you get in that you pump the brakes before you put it in gear. The pistons are, you know, pushed into the calipers, so it's going to take 1 or 2 pumps to get those pistons pushed back out. So if you're in a garage or you're right up against a building and you put it in drive and think you're going to stop in time, you're not. So make sure you pump the brakes. But that's it. That's just a pad change. The rotors are good. I'm going to take some Scotch-Brite and I'm going to clean the rust off the rotors a little bit so that these new pads don't have any problems. But that's how easy and quick it is to do a front brake job on a 2003 Ford Explorer. Whether it's 2-wheel drive or 4-wheel drive, doesn't matter. You can see if this was a 4-wheel drive, you can see the splined hub, so the axle would be coming through there. So it should be the same on either one. So anyway, that's it. You can see how rusty this, and this is just surface rust. This does not hurt a brake rotor or pads. A lot of cars just parked overnight. If it rains or if it's humid, you'll see rust build up on the rotors overnight. And as soon as you apply the brakes and you know, start moving, it comes off. So don't worry about that. The main thing is just make sure that the rotor's smooth and thick. You know, that you got that it hadn't been turned down so thin that it's dangerous. So these rotors are good. Now it's got fresh brakes on it, so we should be good on this vehicle. Okay, so got the wheel off. First thing I like to do is pry the piston back. That way it's already pried back before I even get the caliper off. You just real easily put it in between the rotor and the piston pad. You're not reusing the old pads, so you don't have to worry about messing those up. I think that's about it. Just to make sure, see if I can get this in there. Alright. Now let's take these bolts out. 2 bolts. As long as your rotor's good and all you're doing is a pad change, you just take the 2 caliper bolts out. Caliper out, flip it around so you can see it. Make sure that your boots are in good shape. Make sure they move freely. These move free. I can tell that there's grease in there. Now on these, you just kind of got to pry these out. Once you get the little lugs up and over the deal, they come out pretty easy. You got these little lugs. Hopefully you can see those. Those will kind of hold you up, so that's what that's all about. Got to get the pads, new ones. Now the piston on this particular vehicle's got these little prongs, so you kind of got to work to get them in there, but sometimes it's easier than other times, but a lot of times a good smack with a tool will get it. And there you have it. Make sure your lugs are in the right spot. There we go. Now the piston on this one has kind of brought itself out just a little bit, so I'm just going to easily push it back in. Bottom's got to go in first. Make sure that, now these pads did not come with new hardware. The hardware on these are in pretty good shape. Bottom goes in first, and the top slides in. You got to push these boots out of the way. Those got to go that way. And that is about how fast it takes. Change the brakes. Don't over tighten these bolts. They're not coming off. Just snug them up. You don't have to worry about them coming off. And the main thing I always try to remind people, before you put this in gear, pump the brakes. Get in, pump the brakes. The pistons are pushed into the calipers. It's going to take 1 or 2 pumps to push those pistons back out and seat the pads up against the rotor. Otherwise, you run the possibility of running into something before your brakes are fully, energized or depressed or whatever you want to call it. Anyway, that's it. That's how fast it is. Rear brake job on a 2003 Explorer. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to take some Scotch-Brite and run around these rotors. These are new pads, so I'm going to clean this rotor up a little bit. That way the new pads don't have rust embedded in them. But typically rust does not cause a problem. These rusted literally in about a day or two. We've had a lot of rain here in Texas the past week, and this vehicle's been sitting, and they were rusted up overnight. So nothing you can do about it. When you start driving, the action of the braking rubs all that rust off. But since these are new pads, I'm going to go ahead and clean these rotors up. That's about all I got. You guys take care.